Good day, and thanks for tuning in to this August the 12th edition of my weekly video devotion. Just a couple of announcements. First of all, there won't be an edition next week as I'll be on vacation. And just a reminder that we're moving communion from next Sunday until August the 23rd, since I'll be gone on that day. But Daniel will be here and he'll be preaching on Sunday. I think he'll be in for a real treat on that one. Our reading for today is from Acts 20, verses 7 through 12. On the first day of the week when we met to break bread, Paul was holding a discussion with them. Since he intended to leave the next day, he continued speaking until midnight. There were many lamps in the room upstairs where we were meeting. A young man named Eutychus, who was sitting in the window, began to sink off into a deep sleep, while Paul talked still longer. Overcome by sleep, he fell to the ground 3 floors below and was picked up dead. But Paul went down and, bending over him, took him in his arms and said, "Do not be alarmed, for his life is in him." Then Paul went upstairs, and after he had broken bread and eaten, he continued to converse with them until dawn. Then they left. Meanwhile, they had taken the boy away alive and were not a little comforted. It's the word of the Lord. Now, some of you may recall what happened to my daughter Amanda when she was studying abroad in Scotland. She'd only been in the country for a few weeks. She was a student at Wartburg College, but spending a semester at Aberdeen University. One January day, it was exceptionally warm. It was a beautiful day, and so she brewed herself a cup of tea and decided to open up her window and sit on the ledge. So she took a chair and got herself up there. In Scotland over there were no screens in the windows because bugs aren't really a problem over there. And so as she was finishing up her cup of tea, she looked at the clock and realized that it was time for her to get ready to go to her next class. So she went to step down and hit the chair with her foot and missed it and realized she needed to try it again. So she leaned back to give it another go, but lost her balance and fell out the window 3 stories, landing on her feet before she fell in a grassy area. She missed an electrical box by about 2 feet. A pre-med student heard her scream and got to her quickly and told her to lie still. She was going to try to get up, but she said, "Lay down," and that probably saved her spinal cord. The student called for an ambulance, and she was taken to the Royal Aberdeen Hospital. She was diagnosed with an unstable fracture of her first lumbar vertebra. At the time of her fall, I was at a pastoral conference in Florida, and so I needed to get back home to be with our son Nick before Diane left for Scotland. When news of the accident reached Wartburg College, where Amanda was a student, one of her professors, Fred Strickert, went to visit the president of the college, and he reminded him that they had this fund set up, an emergency fund, in case a student was ever injured or grew sick, that staff at the college could go to fly and be with them. We'd known Fred for many years. He was actually my summer Greek professor when I started my studies at Wartburg Seminary, and then Amanda as a student as well. So the president allowed Fred to fly over to Scotland, and when he reached her at the end of their first visit, Fred read this passage, Acts 20, verses 7 through 12, to Amanda, and then prayed with her. She reminded her that Eutychus, Amanda had fallen 3 stories, but unlike Eutychus, she had not died. One of the surgeons at Royal Aberdeen had recently developed a procedure for treating injuries like Amanda's. Instead of fusing together the vertebra in that area, he would insert 2 rods on either side of the injured vertebra and install 4 screws to hold those rods in place. Then after a year, after things had calcified, then that hardware could be taken out. The doctor in Scotland made arrangements with an orthopedic surgeon at Mercy Hospital in Des Moines to remove this hardware. This procedure was totally unknown at this time in the United States of America. A surgeon at Mercy learned the procedure, and it continues to be used by a growing number of surgeons in our country. Amanda has enjoyed a full recovery. Her only restriction is to avoid contact sports. Amanda's married to her husband Matt. They have 3 children. She serves as a deacon of the ELCA. And Amanda and her husband Matt are beginning new calls in Northwest Ohio in the next several weeks. On that day 12 years ago in Scotland, we could have lost our daughter. She could have died. She could have been paralyzed the rest of her life. But like God acted through Paul to restore Eutychus to life, so God restored Amanda to health. In the end, God brought good out of a very, very bad situation. Be reminded of that, like we are, my family, all the time. For that, thanks be to God, and thanks for tuning in.